This is the download from Sounds Profitable, the most important news from this week and why it matters to people in the business of podcasting. I'm Manuela Bedoya.
And I'm Shreya Sharma. The download is brought to you by Magellan AI. Track the trends in spend, ad load, podcasts on YouTube, and more with Magellan AI's advertising benchmark report for Q2 available now. You can find a link in the description or visit magellan.ai.
This week, new updates come to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Podcast advertising considerations and spending reach 9-year high. And study finds people 60 and over only appear in 4% of ads. Let's get started.
As of this week, Apple now provides subscription analytics in Apple Podcasts Connect, adding the ability to track how many listeners started free trials, number of paid subscriptions, the percentage of users who converted from free to paid, and more. Delegated delivery. Apple's system allowing hosts to directly submit episodes to a premium Apple Podcast feed announced 5 new hosts, including Audio Means, Captivate, Podbean, Podspace, and Transistor by the end of the year. And last but not least in our Apple corner, the Linkfire marketing platform has expanded into podcasts with an exclusive integration with Apple Podcasts. Linkfire for Podcasts users have the ability to generate unlimited smart links to landing pages for their podcasts, which provide anonymized audience insights to a Linkfire dashboard. Linkfire for Podcasts will start at $9.99 a month at launch.
New this Monday from Pierre Bouvard at Westwood One. New research from Advertiser Perceptions. The annual study aims to gauge agency and brand sentiment in podcast advertising. This year's edition surveyed 302 marketers and media agencies, finding advertisers and agency interest in podcasting has reached a 9-year high. While podcast advertising is getting more attention, Bouvard cites Q2 Magellan AI podcast advertising benchmark report's finding that marketers only spend $200,000 a month marketing in podcasts in a top 500. A quote from the article: "At the dawn of cable network advertising, legendary BBDO media chief Arnie Semsky created the 5% solution, which stipulated that brands devote 5% of media budgets to the nascent cable medium. Semsky reasoned 5% was enough of an allocation to generate meaningful impact. Semsky was prescient. His brands hugely benefited from taking an early, bold, and strong position in a growing new medium, a lesson for the marketers of today." End quote. Other highlights from the study include the finding that 77% of marketers have discussed podcast advertising for potential media investment. 62% would consider advertising on podcasts in the next 6 months, and 58% currently advertise in podcasts, an almost 400% increase since the first IAB podcast upfront in 2015.
This week at Podcast Movement, Spotify announced several updates coming to both the Spotify for Podcasters dashboard and Megaphone. Spotify for Podcasters dashboard users will get access to impression analytics for how users find their podcast within Spotify. The invite-only automated ads program within Spotify has seen success in early stages and has now been extended to the UK and Australia with the goal of tripling the amount of podcasts in the program. Starting today on Megaphone, users have access to the Spotify Audience Network Performance Dashboard, which aims to provide a holistic video of the Spotify Audience Network metrics, such as average CPM and ad location.
A new report from creative tech company CreativeX finds advertising is underrepresenting a sizable, often affluent demographic. Their analysis included over 126,000 global ads released last year, representing $124 million in ad spend. Of that sample, CreativeX found just 4% of people cast in ads were over the age of 60, an age group that represents 16% of the U.S. population alone. From Carlene Lukovitz's article, the 60-plus demographic has a higher disposable income than younger generations and represents 25% of global spending power, yet only 3% of digital media budgets are allocated to ads featuring this audience, according to CreativeX. When older adults are shown in ads, nearly 2/3, or 65%, of them were shown in family or domestic settings, And although the average retirement age is now 66 and rising, fewer than 1% of older adults were cast in ads that showed them in professional or leadership environments. End quote. Podcasting has had an uphill struggle to get traction with the 55-plus demographic, which likely isn't helped by advertising's tendency to create ads for younger demographics.
Finally, it's time for our semi-regular roundup of articles we're calling Quick Hits. These are articles that didn't quite make the cut for today's episode, but are still worth including in your weekend reading. This week, exclusive. SXM Media partners with The Trade Desk and Human by Reem Makari. SXM Media will add support for third-party audibility measurement to programmatic campaigns bought through The Trade Desk. HUMAN, or Human, a fraud sensor network accredited by the Media Rating Council to detect invalid traffic, will be a traffic validation solution for Adwizz's marketplace inventory. Trident Digital announces YouTube integration with podcast metrics. The new integration adds YouTube views of podcast episodes into the Trident Podcast Metrics dashboard, allowing publishers to keep track of both podcast downloads and YouTube performance. Podcast One readies public offering in September by Brad Hill. The listing of Podcast One is based on the valuation Live One received in February that gave Podcast One a market range of $230 to $274 million. On-demand audio passes linear audio. Edison Research has found that as of Q2 2023, on-demand audio makes up 50.3% of daily time consuming audio.
And that was The Download, brought to you by Sounds Profitable. Today's episode was hosted on Art19. Find out more at art19.com. I know we went through today's stories fast, so be sure to check out the links to every article mentioned right in your podcast listening app or on soundsprofitable.com/podcast. And thank you for sticking with us as we bring you the top stories you might have missed from the past week. I'm Manuela Bedoya.
And I'm Shreya Sharma. Our producers are Brian Barletta, Gavin Gaddis, and Tom Webster. Special thanks to Art19 for hosting The Download. And thanks to you for joining us. Robot?
Download complete.